Prime Minister that he knew that Mandelson had continued his relationship with Epstein even after he'd been convicted. But today, he's saying that he's clarifying that, and he simply means that he knew that they'd known each other, and that, in fact, that he believed that Mandelson had barely known him. What's going on here?
This is complete nonsense, and everybody knows it. I asked him a very specific question yesterday about whether or not the information about the continued relationship was in the security vetting, and he said yes. Catherine, this stuff was on Google for people who were looking. So for him to pretend that he didn't know when the FT said to him directly in 2024, long before the appointment, that Mandelson continued this relationship, it's just not true. And I'm shocked that he's playing the victim now.
All right, brace yourself, because British politics has once again looked into the mirror, sighed dramatically, and said, "This isn't my fault, actually." Picture the scene. Westminster, lights on, cameras rolling, tension thicker than a Pret sandwich at rush hour. And front and center of the drama, Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, doing his very best impression of a man wronged, while Kemi Badenoch stands in the wings, arms folded, eyebrows raised, basically saying, "Oh, come off it." Welcome back to Brit Article, where we cut through the spin, the sanctimony, and the sound bites, and yes, occasionally through the patience of the British public. If you like fast takes, sharp commentary, and politics served without the soggy garnish, do me a favor now. Hit subscribe, tap that notification bell, and stay locked in. Because this story, it's not just spicy, it's Westminster Vindaloo. Now, let's dive straight in. No warm-up lap, no gentle jog. Straight into the political treadmill set to panic. Kemi Badenoch has accused the Prime Minister of playing the victim over the Lord Mandelson scandal. And not in a quiet, polite, murmured sort of way. No, this was full-throated, no-nonsense, I've read the files and I'm not buying it energy. According to Badenoch, Keir Starmer's latest defense, "I was misled, I didn't know, I trusted the wrong man," isn't just weak, it's insulting. Because here's the core problem. Starmer isn't claiming ignorance like someone who missed a memo. He's claiming it like someone who had the memo, read the memo, highlighted the memo, and then said, well, let's hope for the best. Cue the first big turn in the story. Badenoch says the Prime Minister knew. Not vaguely, not secondhand, not in the "it was on Google somewhere" sense. She says he was explicitly told back in 2024 that Lord Mandelson had continued a relationship that raised serious red flags during the security vetting process. Not rumors, not vibes, actual warnings, the kind of warnings that come with underlines, footnotes, and an unspoken "don't say we didn't tell you." So when the Prime Minister now says, "I was lied to," Badenoch's response is essentially, by who? The files you read? And this is where things get awkward. Because if the Prime Minister genuinely didn't know, then the question becomes, why didn't he know when the information was apparently sitting right there? And if he did know, then we're not talking about a mistake, we're talking about a decision, a choice, a gamble. And British voters are many things, but forgiving of political gambles involving controversial appointments is not one of them. Here's where Badenoch twists the knife, not personally, but politically. She says the Prime Minister should be apologizing not just to Epstein's victims, but to the country for ignoring security advice, for brushing past vetting concerns, for appointing someone despite being fully aware of the risks. And instead, she argues, what we're getting is moral theater, a carefully staged apology tour where Starmer positions himself as just another person who was fooled, one of us, a victim of deceit. Which might work if you're a backbench MP who trusted the wrong WhatsApp group, but not if you're the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Now, quick pause, because this is the moment where viewers usually ask, hang on, why does this matter so much? Here's why. Appointments like this aren't just about personalities, they're about trust in the system. Security vetting exists for a reason. It's not a vibes check, it's not a box-ticking exercise. It's supposed to be the firewall between public office and public scandal. When that firewall is ignored, or worse, overridden, it tells voters that accountability is optional right up until it becomes embarrassing. And that's exactly the line Badenoch is pushing. She says the Prime Minister is self-righteous, a word that stings because it cuts to the image Starmer has spent years carefully crafting. The calm adult in the room, the serious man, the lawyer who follows the rules. Because once you're seen as sanctimonious and careless, that brand collapses faster than a ministerial resignation promise. Now, just as this story is bubbling nicely, in comes GB News senior political correspondent Catherine Forrester with the question that every political scandal eventually circles back to: who's going to take the fall? Specifically, she asks about Morgan McSweeney, the Prime Minister's chief of staff, who allegedly pushed the appointment. And suddenly, the spotlight shifts from Mandelson to the machinery around Starmer. Because scandals rarely survive on one name alone. They spread, they implicate, they force uncomfortable choices. Would McSweeney going be enough to save the Prime Minister? That's the subtext. That's the ticking clock. And Badenoch's answer is fascinating, not because it's evasive, but because it's strategic. She says it depends on what's in the files. Translation, show us the receipts. She's not interested, she insists, in Starmer's job security. She's interested in whether Britain is being governed at all. And this is where her attack widens from scandal to system. Because Badenoch's bigger argument isn't just about Mandelson, it's about paralysis. She says the country isn't being governed, that despite Labour's huge majority, nothing is happening. No momentum, no urgency, just constant internal drama, endless process, and a political class obsessed with its own survival. And this is where the rhetoric shifts gears, from prosecution to pitch. She rolls out a shopping list of conservative priorities like a rapid-fire manifesto preview. Lower energy costs, scrap business rates to save the high street, abolish stamp duty to get the housing market moving, leave the ECHR, control borders, restore public order.
Now, whether you agree with those policies or not, the point she's making is crystal clear. We could be doing things, big things, controversial things, nation-shaping things. Instead, we're stuck in a loop of scandal management and damage control. And here's the clever bit. She frames it not as Labour's moral failure, but their administrative one. Not they're evil, but they're ineffective. In British politics, that's often the more damaging accusation. Now, let's talk about the Prime Minister's apology itself, because this is where tone matters. Sir Keir Starmer directly addressed the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, apologizing for believing Mandelson's lies and for appointing him as the UK's ambassador to the US. The language was solemn, heavy, designed to convey moral seriousness. He spoke about power failing people, about justice not being optional, about accountability. On paper, it's a strong speech. But politics isn't judged on paper, it's judged on context. And the context here is that several Labour MPs have already broken ranks, criticizing the appointment and the government's initial refusal to release all the relevant papers. When your own side starts murmuring and then speaking out loud, you know the ground is shifting beneath your feet. The decision to hand sensitive documents to Parliament's Intelligence and Security Committee, instead of withholding them entirely, was clearly a response to pressure, a retreat framed as transparency, a recalibration sold as responsibility. But here's the problem. Transparency after backlash doesn't feel like leadership, it feels like compliance. And that's the thread Badenoch keeps pulling. She's not denying the apology, she's questioning the timing, the sincerity, the sudden rediscovery of accountability after the headlines hit. Because if Starmer knew in 2024, as she claims, then this entire apology lands differently. It stops being a moment of moral reckoning and starts looking like reputational triage. And British voters are very good at spotting the difference. Now, zoom out for a second. This isn't just about Mandelson. It's about how this government handles risk, responsibility, and reaction. Do they lead from the front, or do they apologize from the back foot? Do they take ownership, or do they outsource blame to advisors, aides, and misunderstood briefings? Badenoch's charge that Starmer is playing the victim lands because it taps into a deeper frustration, a sense that politics has become a game of who can look the most wounded rather than who can fix the problem. And here's the irony. Starmer's entire pitch to the country was competence, stability, seriousness. If he loses that, he's not just fighting an opposition leader, he's fighting his own brand. As for what happens next, that depends on what those files show, on whether more names get dragged into the frame, on whether Labour MPs decide this is a hill worth dying on, or at least a molehill worth resigning over. But one thing is clear. This story isn't going away quietly, not with local elections looming, not with trust already fragile, and not with an opposition leader who smells blood and knows exactly how to frame it. So that's where we are. A prime minister apologizing, an opposition leader accusing, a government insisting it was misled, and a country wondering why, once again, accountability seems to arrive late, if at all. If you want sharp takes, fast breakdowns, and British politics without the fluff, make sure you're subscribed to Brit Article. Hit that bell and stay with us as this story unfolds. Thanks for watching.